What is up, guys? It's your boy Codename Cactus, and today Bungie just dropped 2 new developer insight articles detailing how they plan to drastically change and hopefully improve Destiny 2 going into Codename Frontiers, which is their term for what is coming in 2025 and beyond. And so let's get started here with the first of those 2 articles, and that is Combat Modifiers and more. So Bungie says, welcome to one of many developer insight articles for Codename Frontiers. Over the weeks and months to come, we'll be covering a lot of different topics about changes coming to Destiny 2 next year with these deeper dives. They then say this deep dive is introducing combat modifiers and how they will fit into our larger modifier system changes, providing new abilities or properties to the enemy combatants you encounter in an activity. These new threats will create new gameplay, raise the challenge, and overall change up the experience from run to run. So here is the TLDR. First of all, we are investing more than ever before in our activity modifier systems. Then, activities will be updated with a library of modifiers that can change how you approach combat on every playthrough. And lastly, combatants will gain varied powers and buffs in order to create new gameplay threats and encourage changes in player strategy, especially for higher challenge levels. So, here's what Bungie identifies as the problem right now, saying today in Destiny, playing the same PvE activity repeatedly can feel like a chore, particularly when chasing a reward or following a narrative. Running through the latest exotic mission the second, third, and fourth time just doesn't feel fun enough to justify the time spent. Eventually, you know when each enemy spawns, where to fight them, and how to win without any challenge. This is a component of Destiny 2 we want to greatly improve with Codename Frontiers, keeping activities fresh and challenging each time you run them. So here is Bungie's solution to that problem, and it's to improve the experience of replaying activity content by adding variety and unpredictability to each playthrough, so you have a first-class modifiers system. So Destiny 2 has added modifiers to activities since the launch of the first Nightfall. Who else remembers trying to wrangle Solar Shield Shanks in 2014 Archon Priest? I sure do. Now with Codename Frontiers, we're investing more than ever in our modifier systems to improve the fun and challenge in activities. So we are, first of all, creating combatant-focused modifiers that change the way players approach combat on every playthrough. So you have Banes.
I was born in the darkness.
Then you have enemy modifiers and combat modifiers. After that, you're designing modifiers so that they can combine to create a wide variety of experiences. And lastly, Bungie wants to reduce barriers to entry and time to fun by reducing the number of build crafting necessary modifiers and replacing them with new combat modifiers. So here are Banes, and they're going to be
Extremely painful.
now, okay, I gotta stop. So they're also known as combatant affix modifiers. An enemy unit with a Bane will present a different challenge to players according to which Bane is affecting them. Enemies that spawn with these modifiers appear unpredictably during an activity, so each run may present a different challenge. Here are 2 of the Banes we will be releasing in Episode 2 Revenant, so that's coming up very, very soon as we start testing out this new system ahead of Codename Frontiers. So first of all, you have Meteors and Shock, and Bungie actually has a video of this modifier I'm going to be playing right now. So they say specifically the Meteor's Bane gives combatants the ability to launch solar projectiles that track but can be shot down. Shock will continuously build up a charge that will discharge on a single target within a line of sight, and killing a unit with this Bane will cause it to spread to others nearby. So definitely, very different than what we've seen with the current modifier slate, where you just have, certain shields or enemies are boosted in some way, but they're still using the abilities they normally use. This is going to make things pretty different judging from this gameplay. But moving on to actually more gameplay, they have another sneak preview of other in-development Banes they are working on, but they're still subject to change, obviously. So this one is Berserk, and Bungie says, killing combatants with Berserk causes other combatants nearby to enrage. That's pretty interesting. So you kill the guy with the purple thing above his head and all these other nearby enemies just start charging in and shooting you. All right, okay. And another one here is called Punchable. Now for this one, punchable combatants are immune to all ranged damage and damage from status effects until they are hit with a melee attack. So you're gonna have to get that melee attack off. Obviously, presumably this would work with ranged melees and make those significantly more valuable in higher level content. You know, throwing your Titan shield, for example, would be a great way to deal with this. And then after that, guys, we have Nuclear. Now for this, they say once a unit with the Nuclear Bane reaches low health, it begins an arming sequence. If the unit is not defeated before the sequence completes, it explodes by a massive fiery shockwave. Now, overall, guys, to be honest, these Banes do look pretty dramatic. I mean, I think they are going to change up gameplay from encounter to encounter. You saw gameplay from the Devil's Lair. Imagine doing that on a Grandmaster. You're hiding behind the train. There's a nuclear guy. You're like, kill him quick before he explodes. That is different than what we're experiencing right now with the Devil's Lair. I think these Banes will absolutely change up how you approach different encounters and different combat scenarios. But with that being said, is that enough? Like, you know, I've done the Devil's Lair 1,355 times at this point. You know, is randomly having a guy with a nuclear explosion above his head going to be enough to make that entire activity feel fresh? That is the big question, and I don't think we can answer it right now. But undoubtedly, again, they're pretty dramatic. They are absolutely going to change how you fight enemies in sequences from time to time depending on what Banes you get. Moving on from there, we have a section on enemy modifiers. They say while Banes will appear intermittently on individual units, enemy modifiers are used to change base aspects of all enemies in an activity. Adjust your strategies to account for an active enemy modifier, or you may end up flat-footed when something unexpected happens. For example, under a certain enemy modifier shipping in Revenant, some enemies may have copied some tricks about booby-trapping their drops from a famous Scorn Baron. So I think what they're saying is like, you see a heavy ammo brick and it's a booby trap heavy ammo brick and it explodes, or you drop an exotic engram, you go to pick it up, it explodes. Like that could be actually kind of crazy. Then they have combat modifiers. Modifiers aren't just about changing enemies, they affect players too. Surge mods are a classic modifier type that's been used for years in Destiny ritual activities, but we've come to realize that too many forceful build crafting modifiers can become barriers to players. So we've been working to create new modifiers that are more accepting of varied strategies and builds. I kind of understand this. I think honestly, personally, why doesn't the overpowered weapon and the elemental surge stack? Like, I know that's not the best for new players, but my god, in terms of build crafting, it seems like it's almost too easy to fall under the checklist of like, okay, I just use a solar weapon. I use a solar weapon and I'm good. Or I can use any hand cannon because it's unstoppable hand cannons. So now I don't have to adhere to any of these modifiers because I have unstopped hand cannons in my seasonal artifact. And I think that just kind of like ruins like having to figure out what weapons are best in these certain activities. I would love to have them stack so it's like, oh my goodness, overcharged fusion rifles and it's solar. Do I have any solar fusion rifles? And it would just bring all these weapons to the forefront of being super good. But of course, you don't have to use those weapons. You can just use solar weapons or just fusion rifles or whatever to get a bonus. That's my opinion. But again, that is actually even more narrow in build crafting. It sounds like Bungie is trying to make these things more accessible to newer players. At the end here, we have a bit of an FAQ. So first of all, what about champions? Will they be using Banes too? And they say champions still exist in our future for modifiers, but they won't be hosting any Banes, thank God. Like imagine an Overload Minotaur with one of these freaking Banes, dude, it'd be crazy. They say, can Banes stack on an enemy? In Revenant, only one Bane can be present on an enemy at a time, And are you replacing all the old modifiers with these new ones? They say no, we're trying to strike a balance of keeping the best of the old modifiers that work well with new ones, but these new modifiers raise the bar enough that we will most likely start to retire the older ones over time. But guys, moving on from there, let's get into the second article, which is a lot shorter here, and it's called Raids and Dungeons. So they say for this one, each expansion will continue to offer aspirational endgame content, either a new raid or a new dungeon, with additional content coming in subsequent major updates. So here's the TLDR for this article. Every year, we will kick off with a brand new raid as part of the first expansion. The following major update will then expand on this raid, adding new challenge, twists, and rewards. The second expansion each year will deliver a new dungeon with an expanded reward offering. The fourth and major update of the year will launch an event that leverages the legacy, raid, and dungeon content along the lines of the Pantheon. That's actually pretty exciting. So here's what they say. First of all, for new raids. Raids are a cornerstone of Destiny. They bring fire teams together to tackle overwhelming odds and create legendary moments with the world's first race. So we're still kicking off every year with a new raid, starting with a new raid in Codename Apollo that will stack up against the rich and varied history of experiences in this space. Raids will continue to offer a complete pool of exclusive weapons, armor, and exotics, and these can be obtained at higher tiers by taking on additional challenge. So that's actually very important. In a previous Developer Insight article, Bungie talked about how you can add more and more modifiers and up the difficulty level like through customization of a certain activity to earn like tier 5 rewards. And you can see in this example they used every single perk is masterworked. Even the barrel is now a masterworked hammer-forged rifling, right? So you can apparently do that with raids coming out in Codename Frontiers. That is pretty crazy. And they then say, facing the tall task of following up Salvation's Edge, we are exploring some unique twists on the raid format. This is one area where we will not be giving very much information about in the future, as we don't want to risk spoiling the day one experience for the raid race. Moving on from there, raid feats. Our current iteration of master raids and challenges have followed a similar format for a few years, so it's time to change the formula. Starting with Codename Apollo, new raids will support a raid-specific form of challenge customization, where players can select modifiers called feats. Feats will expose and enforce rules, such as time trials, contest combatants, or other mode modifiers unique to the raid. The more feats active during a run, the better the chance to earn higher tier rewards. Super interesting. Then you have the Raid Challenge update. In the first major update following Codename Apollo, the raid will receive a challenge update, adding new rewards, new mechanics, new feats, and potentially even new encounters. This update will kick off with a raid race event and be a venue for experienced raiders to further challenge their skills. In addition to the highest tiers of the raid rewards being available with these challenges, new and exclusive rewards will be added as well, including new weapons and a catalyst for the raid's exotic weapon. Wow, that's actually crazy. Like, there's a lot of raid weapons out there that don't yet have a catalyst and kind of need one. So having a new raid exotic and a guaranteed catalyst coming later could be really awesome. Then you have new dungeons. They say dungeons are an important part of our endgame activity ecosystem. They provide an accessible raid-like experience that feature unique encounters and mechanics that demand less social coordination and scheduling. So Codename Behemoth, the second expansion of the year, will include a brand new dungeon. Also, because the dungeon will be launching as part of our Codename Behemoth expansion, there will no longer be a separate dungeon key. Additionally, the reward offering for the new dungeons will be expanded to include full weapons and armor sets on par with raids. Wow, super, super interesting. More rewards coming in dungeons, and no dungeon key for Codename Behemoth, that expansion. I think the dungeon keys are a horrible idea. You're just dividing the community even more. And mainly, they're super confusing. I would rather have a certain season just cost $5 more and have a specific dungeon come with that season, because at least it's easier for new players to understand and track. Having this random different purchasable dungeon key, again, it's just very confusing as to what you actually need to access certain content and get certain weapons. Moving on from there, they have a new rad event. Into the Light introduced a raid boss rush event called the Pantheon that put Fireteam's capabilities to the test. This event showed us that our community is hungry for new experiences that break out of the mold of our traditional raids and dungeons. So, in the fourth major update of the year, we're planning another event that introduces novelty and allows our team to experiment with legacy, raid, and dungeon offerings to create surprising aspirational challenges. We are very early in the design stages of this event, so more details will come. So, Bungie realizing that a lot of people had a ton of fun with Pantheon and expanding on that is great. Now, Bungie ends here with raids and dungeons in the core game. Dungeon content will also feature prominently in the new portal as part of the Pinnacle Ops category. And they have the portal example right here that they showed in a previous article. So they say several updated dungeons will be available to launch and play with full challenge customization. While raid content will not initially be part of the portal categories, we are exploring ways to introduce it in a future release. Until then, new and legacy raid content will continue to be available in their current locations along with their exclusive reward pools. Guys, there you have it. Definitely some pretty exciting stuff. Like those Banes do undoubtedly look crazy, and also like the new next dungeon for Codename Behemoth not requiring a raid key. The dungeons have expanded loot pools so that you have even more things to earn in them. That's awesome too. A new Pantheon style event. Now, the whole customization challenge thing, we have still yet to see, and we simply don't know whether or not that will be a success. Back in the day, we had Nightfall cards. You remember these? You had like the Nightfall thing in your inventory that you could go in and change the modifiers. That did not work out. So this seems like that, but even diving further into that whole idea. I think there's something to be said of like a base difficulty, and then can you, as a fire team, beat it under these challenges under this criteria? Having everyone beating content on like 300 different variations with different modifiers, will that actually work? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We'll have to wait and see. Until then, guys, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus, as linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.